Phonics rules are a set of rules that kind of regulate where some sounds occur and how they are arranged in a word. Knowing these rules for a certain language can make learning that language much easier, since it helps you predict how a word would sound even without knowing the word. Just like the rule in English, when a syllable ends in a consonant and there's only one vowel in it, that vowel will be short, like when we say tap, wish, lock, and so on. But when a syllable ends with a silent E, the vowel sound in that word will be long, like when we say take, gene, hope, fuse, and so on. What we will learn in this lesson is a set of phonics rules, but for Arabic. They will help us in many cases to predict what is the tashkeel sign used in a specific situation for some letters. Knowing these rules, or call them tips and tricks if you will help you speed up the process of acquiring the skill of reading Arabic without needing the tashkeel. And here I have to emphasize that these tips or these rules can never replace the proper learning process of 5 steps that we have explained extensively in the previous lesson. So if you haven't watched that lesson yet, then I really recommend to first watch it before proceeding with this one. Now, let's start from the beginning. Rule number 1. You can't start a word with a long vowel. In Arabic, there are 3 long vowels, alif, waw, and ya, which can never come at the beginning of the word. But why can't we start the word with them? Well, simply because long vowels in Arabic need to be preceded with a short vowel of the same nature. If it's the first letter, then there can't possibly be any letter before the first letter to have a short vowel. So it will not occur, and there will never be a long vowel at the beginning of the word. Now, I know what you're thinking now. You think that you have seen words that do start with these letters. Well, you might think they do, but they can't be long vowels. So for starters, any word that looks like it starts with an alif, like the word ism, for example, it actually starts with a Hamza, not an alif. And without going in many details on the difference between the two, check out this lesson, it will answer all your questions. But words like wardah or yamshi, don't these words start with long vowels? Well, these waw and ya do occur at the beginning of thousands of words, but not as long vowels, but rather as semi-vowels. Why? Because first, they don't have sukoon on them, and second, because there can't be a letter before them with a dhamma or a kasra for them to actually function as long vowels. So instead, they will be called semi-vowels. So, unlike English and so many other languages, there can't be a long vowel at the beginning of the word. Rule number 2. If there's an alif anywhere in the word, the letter before it will always have Fatha. Since alif cannot function as a semi-vowel, any time you see an alif, it will always be a long vowel, which means that the letter before it will always have Fatha. Like the word bab. Notice that the alif could also take this shape when it comes at the end of the word. We call it alif maqsoora, and the same rules apply here too. So before it, you will always see a fatha as well. Like in the word Mustafa. If you want to learn the difference between the alif maqsoora and alif and how to pronounce it properly, then you can check out this lesson. Rule number 3. Words can't start with a consonant sound. In English, we can say words like stop, which starts with the consonant S, And this is the case for many other languages. But in Arabic, that is not possible. So, the first symbol to rule out at the beginning of the word is the sukoon, because it is impossible to find at the beginning of the word. Rule number 4. If the word ends with ta marboota, then the letter before ta marboota will always have fatha on it. So, for this word as an example, you would only need to remember to add kasra at the beginning of it, and the rest of the word will not need tashkeel from you to know how to pronounce it, if you remember the rules that we've just talked about. So we say kitabah. And there are other examples. Yamamah, qaryah. So there will always be fatha before ta marboota. Rule number 5. When a word starts with a Hamza, the placement of the Hamza will always indicate which short vowel it has. So if the Hamza is put under, this would mean that this Hamza has a kasra. And if the Hamza is on top, it will indicate that this Hamza has fatha on top. But then, what about if it has dhamma then? Well, if the Hamza has dhamma on it, it will always be indicated, since this is a tashkeel rule in Arabic. Otherwise, it will always confuse the reader. So, when Hamza has dhamma, it will be added to the word 100% of the time. So for this word, I will always assume that it starts with a fatha on the Hamza, and never dhamma. And I should say, akhraja. Because if it had dhamma, it will always be indicated. Like that. Ukhrija. And if the Hamza has kasra, the word will look like that. Ijar. So each variation of the Hamza will have a unique look when it comes at the beginning of the word. Rule number 6. If a word starts with waw, then 95% of the time, it will have fatha on top of it. Mind you, there are still instances where waw will have kasra or dhamma. But these are much less common, and when you see and learn these words, they will be easy to remember since they are fewer in number. So now a word like this could be read without needing tashkeel, just by applying a couple of rules. Waqar, which means respect. Rule number 7. If a word starts with ya, you should first start adding fatha on the ya, since this is the most common use for it when it comes at the beginning of the word. The reason is that every single verb in the present form must start with ya that has fatha. Like these two examples. Do you think you can read these two verbs without showing you the tashkeel on them? Yara, yanam. So a word starting with a ya is almost certainly an active verb in the present tense. Again, there are words that don't follow this rule, but they are not common. Rule number 8. Hamzat al-wasl of al will always have fatha on it, and the lam that comes after it will always have sukoon. So we say al-qalam, al-bab. But don't forget that in the case of some letters, the lam will be assimilated with the letter after it. Ash-shajarah, as-sayf, and so on. Rule number 9. This rule is called in Arabic sakkin taslam, which literally means add sukoon and be safe. This rule specifically tackles the second type of tashkeel that we talked about in the previous lesson, which is i'rab or case ending. If you don't know i'rab yet, and you don't want to make a mistake by adding a wrong vowel at the end of the word, then to be safe, you may always add sukoon to the end of the word, because it will always be correct. So for this sentence, Instead of adding a case ending indicating the function of the word, you can just simply add sukoon if you're not sure which vowel you should be adding. So you would say تعلم الفتى اللغة العربية instead of saying تعلم الفتى اللغة العربية. Finally, there is a tip. Tip number 10. Start with nouns first. In Arabic, there is majorly nouns and verbs. Verbs are typically very flexible in the arrangement of vowels, which means that there are verbs that would accept almost every single probability of tashkeel arrangement, and each will give a different meaning, like the example we've had last time. درس, 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 and so on. But with nouns, that issue is much less common. It is still there, but not as much. So there are a lot of words that have one variation or one dominant variation that is being used most commonly. So words like إنسان, أرض, كهف, شمس, and so on. And all of these nouns belong to what we call in Arabic الأسماء الجامدة, or in English, rigid nouns, which are not derived from a verb. So they will have a certain arrangement of tashkeel that will not be changed easily or not at all. So if you have seen these nouns often enough, you will immediately recognize them and be able to pronounce them correctly without needing tashkeel. So starting with this type of words will save you a lot of time moving forward rather than being busy with the verbs first. And finally, remember, these rules are there to help you learn faster and more effectively and give you a deeper and better understanding of how Arabic vowel system works. But they are not there to replace the systematic process of learning or acquiring this skill. Next lesson, insha'Allah, will be about the most important resources that you need to acquire this skill as fast as possible. If you want it to be next week's lesson, please let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you want to start your journey to learn the tajweed of the Quran, you can click on this link. And if you want to understand the Quran in Arabic, then you should click on that link. And finally, I hope you've learned something new today, and I will see you next time.